To create a gradient-based lattice in Gen3D's design software, we need to make use of this Create Modifier button, which can be found in the Lattice Modification tab. So to create this gradient, we first click on Create Modifier, and then click on the face that you want to modify your lattice from, or basically begin your gradient. And then when you're happy with that, click Create. And the way the lattice modification tool, or the gradient, works is that when you click on the node, you'll get this shaded box. And everything inside the shaded box will have the properties that you set in this Edit Node or Edit Modifier panel. So in this case, what we want is a lattice modifier that has a gradient that begins at this node and has a certain property, and then extends all the way to the bottom of this cube, and by the time we reach the bottom, we want this lattice to have a different property. So in order to do that, we can set this length of the XYZ to be the same size as the original cube. So to do that, I'll just enter these numbers in the box. In this case, we just want a slight overlap, so I'll add 1 millimeter onto each of the edges. So if we go back into our normal lattice tab, which we can see because it highlights the original part in pink, we have a density of this lattice. So at the bottom, we'll have a density of 0.964 and a cell size of 10 millimeters for a gyroid lattice in each of the X, Y, and Z. And then say at the top we want different, so we might want a cell size of 5 and a density much lower, say 0.14 or 0.14 in here. When we generate this now, what we see is that this is actually just all of these parameters, because this has now covered that entire box. But what we can do is add a gradient in any of the axes, but this case makes sense to do it in the z-axis. And this will then linearly interpolate between the values in this edit node box and the original lattice parameters. So when I check this z-axis box and regenerate the lattice, we can now see that there's a smaller cell size on top and a gradient of density between the top and bottom of this lattice. And if I move into orthographic mode, we can see that a little bit more clearly. So you can play around with these lattice parameters, and then when you're happy, you can mesh this lattice and export it out of the system.